This is a DeMarie Productions podcast.
Talking about rejection.
Yeah.
My feelings.
Take one, Bill Mark.
So who hurt you? Who rejected you?
It's just a series of like tough breaks that have been going on lately, all work-wise, that have just like put me in a spot to be primed to talk about rejection today. Yeah.
All day, Bill has been talking quietly. You can hear him though, right? Yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to whisper for the rest.
Don't do it. Earlier you asked something and I nodded because I did not hear what you said.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Where would you like to start? Do we want to talk about our weeks?
Yeah.
New
day.
Yeah. Kick off the top.
Well, we can be honest about it's kind of serendipitous maybe that today's topic is a little bit, it's our most serious topic that we've had to date.
Most personal.
Personal.
Yeah.
It's about rejection today. And is it fair to say that it kind of matches our vibes authentically this week?
Totally matches my vibe authentically this week. And I thought of this one because I'm trying to think of what's most valuable. We've talked about all the fun and we've been having a lot of fun, but in the realm of education and what I would want to know if I was 28 or 38 or whatever, and I'm listening to this pod is first of all, that success is not linear and that everybody goes through their shit. It's not just me, quote unquote, right? And the second thing is how to deal with that and also sometimes welcome it. I mean, maybe welcome is a little too strong.
That's a little strong.
To understand the value of rejection, what it brings to you, that people saying no to you, understand. I just think it's worth talking about.
Well, and to be honest, that shit is still happening in my career.
Yeah.
That is actively still very much a thing.
I mean,
daily, thank God, but
you have two things going on right now in your life that I think are subject to this.
Yes. I feel like when it comes to rejection, there's times where ever since I started the first company being rejected by investors, there's early stage rejection, which I can now look back on with some sense of perspective and gratitude, because without rejection and taking that hit, you really don't learn a whole lot, right? And then we can talk about that, which is those people that just get the free passes and the green lights. And I kind of fucking pity that. I don't actually think that that's the best way to navigate a career. But then there's also times where both of us have had to reject other people.
Ooh, that's harder.
So there's kind of a lot here. And then there's a ton of I'm not in a position to necessarily give anybody advice, but how have I dealt with rejections? The things that I used to do when I was rejected versus now it's a little bit of a different.
You're a human, therefore you are qualified to talk about what it feels like to be rejected, your idea or your services pushed away, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll start with one where I've had to do the rejecting and start one where you've been rejected.
Name names.
Frank Spadafora.
You've never. Has there ever been a time where actually, this is maybe lifting the veil.
I'll get in it.
Where you've not been able to offer me a thing that I wanted?
Oh, 100%. I won't say the company, but the first year I was with a new company and we had 2 shoot days a year with LeBron James because he was, let's just say, tangentially associated with these brands.
Got it.
So the first year I was still wet behind the ears. I didn't have any kind of pull in the company yet. It was really more of we'll tell you who your partners are going to be and you're probably going to say yes, but with a little bit of autonomy. And at that time I was oh, this is a cool one. This is we're shooting on 2 locations. It's in California. It's this is right up our collective alley, the work that you and I have done. And truthfully, yes, I would have called you and said, can we work on this together? Can it happen? And we would have fleshed that out. But in this case, I was nope, I'm going to take exactly the partner given to me, which is exactly what happened. Almost the creative given to me. It was a very limited situation.
I feel that.
I remember telling you about this
now
stuff.
that I know what you're talking about, I don't remember actively pitching you though for it.
Not pitching, but
so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Listen, I'm grateful that I don't know 80-90% of the shit that I've been rejected for that are conversations that have happened outside of me pitching. That almost doesn't even feel like rejection because I didn't want it or know that an opportunity was there for me to lose.
Yeah, you've never, so no, that's probably really boring, but you've never been rejected by me from something that you pitched or bid on. I've probably walked you back a few times to be hey, I know we were talking about a 500, it's a 300, or a 300 is a 150 or whatever.
Again, that to me is not really rejection.
No, it's not. It's just
because there's a difference, right? There's a difference between rejecting ideas and rejecting job opportunities.
Yes, right.
And the job opportunity rejection is the bigger hurt. To me, that's the bigger emotion one. Then if you have to tell me to readjust something, then I don't see that as so much a rejection. maybe it's just me, but like, I don't take that shit personally.
No, but well,
a job rejection, that one hurts.
Yeah,
not just from you, from anybody. You know what I mean?
And now that I think about it, like on the idea side, yes, rejection might be a little too strong, but you have pitched ideas. You have said to me at one time when I was working at that job where we worked together very often, like, hey, unrelated to production or anything you guys might be, you know, working on in the pipeline, can I come in and just present on a few ideas? And I think you presented probably 8, 10 ideas. And I would say they were 80% solid. Like 8 of them were like, I can see this happening, big or small, right? Or with a lot of work or with a little bit of work left to be done on it. But we were just not the company. We were not that time to be like, one of your ideas was like a home makeover, a kitchen makeover, right? And it was very immersive and integrated, and you were gonna like pull in brands and products, and it was a brilliant idea, truly, but pitched to the wrong group at the wrong time.
So that's the thing about rejection is like one of the things that I've learned over the years, but I've come to more recently about pitching as a producer, pitching creative ideas. The idea is not being challenged. It's the people, like, and the timing. For whatever reason on the person's side who I'm talking to, it's a no. Before, I would take that really personally, and you'd be dangerously close, Billiam, to being on a blacklist of mine.
Oh no.
Where you would lose access, and I'd like write you off, and you'd be in the Emmy speech of like, and fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
Like when the time comes that I prevail and my brilliance is actually honored.
Recognized.
You know what I mean? That was a very long list for a very long while. But you realize like, okay, that's me being insecure and being defensive. And like in moments of rejection, I think people are one of 3 things. Either you're insecure, so therefore you immediately bite back and say, well, go fuck you. Like, if you don't like my idea, that's on you. Could say like, what did I do? Like, maybe I'm not as good as they think. Like you could really kind of go weak about it.
Right.
But really what everyone should be doing is, I think, like pause, take the feedback, reflect as to what the situation is that led to the no or the rejection. And then you can that gives you an opportunity and breath to either reposition yourself, change whatever it is that you're presenting and like offer a new service, right? Potentially, or to realize that you're talking to the wrong person. And for whatever reason, like you need to actually just switch out the person that you're pitching.
You got to depersonalize it to see it honestly, which is really hard. So I think of it like, it's like duplicating a photo. And this one photo is my original experience. And I'll come back to being all fucking twisted about that in a moment. But let me just try this version right here where I say like, if I was just any person looking at this situation, what would I make of it? Does this person like that? Was I a little out over my skis? Did I like, you know, did I take some chances I shouldn't have? Or is it just a shitty audience? Was it a bad pitch, right? I've had lots of times where I've had good ideas or good concepts with a shitty pitch. That's where the real growth comes from. It's tough though. And I'll say like getting back to our original topic of like this week, like probably had 3 or 4 of those micro instances happen in the last couple of weeks. And they weigh on you heavily, right? It's something that's like a real kick in the dick.
You have little ones. Have they experienced rejection, and have you had to parent them through moments of rejection?
That is the hardest part. This isn't a parenting podcast.
Does that still happen in the career and in managing? Because you're a manager most times in positions
which isn't altogether different from being a parent. Yeah, I'd say that in both instances, the hardest part is watching people you really genuinely care about, and in the cases of my children, love, have to experience that. Because yes, you can swoop in and shield them from it. You can, you know, craft that take-home project a little better or whatever, you know, to sort of soften the blow for them. But it's like, it's their experience. Like whatever I am today is because of all the instances that have mounted up to amounted to this. And so, no, it is really fucking tough and like heart-aching to watch it. Even again, switching back into the professional sense, watching somebody, you know, take it really, really fucking tough when they've really baked an idea, really went to bat, deep into research and strategy on something, and they pitch it, and watch them just get like swatted out of the room in less time than it took to say good morning, you know?
Brutal.
Yeah, it is incredibly brutal. And then you become like psychologist in that moment. All the things we just talked about, like rough time, let's take another run at this. We can twist this 10 degrees and come back at it again, and it'll seem to them like a brand new idea on a different day. Like, let's not throw it all away.
Yeah.
Let's not, you know, tear the paper.
You're very good at that. When you reject somebody, do you have an amount that you're also willing to play psychologist to calm them down? I have limits on mine, but I'm curious about what you
Yeah, I mean, sure. I've run up against it once or twice as a manager where somebody is like, okay, my gratuity has been extended a bit, right? When I think about it, one, I think about how it felt when it was me, when I've been in those situations. And there's two things I want in that moment. And what I try to practice now, one is truth. Be fucking honest. Tell them why it sucked, right? Just don't say it sucked. Tell them why, like, it needs more shape, it needs more definition, like you're really close on this one, or you got a couple good nuggets here, but like you're far off the mark. Like, be honest.
Detailed.
Because the rest will also be absorbed. When you're honest and somebody sort of is like a little bit ripped open, then you say, but there's a really good idea here. They absorb that as well.
Right.
And they believe it more than just, oh man, this person's just trying to like make me feel better.
Yeah.
But also be soft about it, right? Like be caring enough that somebody put themselves forth, and it's probably a person that's younger than me. It's probably a person that has less experience in their career so far than I do. And like, I wish I would have had a little bit of that kid glove stuff on the other side every once in a while, right? You know, I've been therapist enough where I've been like, okay, look, we need to move on from this. This is also, we're grown-ups, you know?
When I am on the receiving side of that, I am appreciative because I've learned as I've gotten older that in the business world, that's cutthroat. And in New York, it's very competitive. And in Hollywood, it's like, it's a no and no further explanation and no coddling. And it's just a fucking no.
Yes.
And so like when somebody does take the time to be like, and here's why it's a no, I always appreciate that. For us recently, we've been, touring this documentary around festivals, and some festivals have not accepted the film.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, what the hell? Like, again, kind of went through the whole like, fuck you. Like, this is a good film, you know? But then you realize like, oh no, it doesn't even match, our film's content doesn't match the theme of that festival. Or
is about anything that's just different than the way you're thinking of it. That it's only a meritocracy.
That's right.
That only the best idea, best, in this case, film would win. There's so many other variables.
Well, and to disassociate the quality of my creative endeavor or work or project with the rejection.
Yeah.
And just say like, oh, it had nothing to do with my film, actually. It had everything to do with the fact that like, when it comes to festivals, like a lot of that is pre-negotiated. A lot of the bigger festivals have already allocated spots to films to studios. Okay, you might see that the festival has 400 films, but really it's only like 50 are actually sourced organically through the submission process.
Right.
And so until you learn those lessons and start to understand that, it can be like overwhelming to be rejected.
It's commensurate with the value you put on it, right? Like, is that the right word?
Yeah.
When you really, and to use your analogy or your actual real life thing, when you put your movie into what do you call that? A festival, right? You're hoping for amazing things on the other side. You have a lot of literal and figurative things tied into this project. On their side of it, they're just like, oh, we have like 7,000 submissions. Get rid of those 4,000 and let's move on. You know, like it doesn't have the same amount of consequence on their end. But on your side, the rejection is commensurate with that. With what's at risk.
And compounded by it being something that I'm emotionally so tied to and so proud of and stuff like that. But on the corporate side, it's interesting because when I produce for a client, and let's say the campaign is rejected by the audience that it was meant to be delivered to, I'm not very connected to that. Like, I'm not very like, oh, if the campaign was rejected, it's like, well, that kind of sucks. Like, I feel less personally offended by a campaign not doing well for a brand that's hired me to produce, especially if I'm not involved at all on the creative side of things. I'm like, it probably was the creative, you know?
It's a different kind of rejection for me in that scenario because I don't feel personally shunned or turned away by, the fact that it didn't find its audience or didn't hit the mark or didn't deliver what it was supposed to deliver. But I do understand the weight of that and what it took to get to that spot internally and to know, and you sort of, so you get resentful of like, oh, fuck, we had one chance this year. We took our big swing. It wasn't a home run in this case. Now the next time when I go to the table and ask for this again, I'm going to get, well, what happened? Yeah. And so it's like a different type of rejection. It's almost like there's this kind of like allowance given to you. Yeah. And when it doesn't deliver immediately, it's like, well, then maybe we should talk about that allowance.
Or
next
maybe
time.
it's you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it becomes a whole
and that's true too. But then
job security thing.
Oh my God. Yeah. The sort of Damocles constantly hanging over my head in those situations.
Have there been moments of like clear rejection that you can recall right now that like really fucking hurt or made you pivot or shape your career?
I don't think it's unique, but I will say that I have a lot of story, like from the most mundane of being like early graphic designer or early in my New York career, being in a graphic designer and being a freelancer and not getting paid and having to chase payment or getting like just like dismissed in a day or something because I wasn't good enough at, at that role or something like that. That was like the easiest, most benign rejection. When I was 17, I was in a court deposition that was about myself. And the premise of the entire deposition was, look at him. He'll never be able to earn a living in life. And so you should, I'm sort of paraphrasing here, right? You should give him money because he is so in a way that he's never going to amount to anything and he'll never be able to feed himself. And I had to attest to that. That was my role in this whole charade. It wasn't a charade. It was fucking real. But the example, and I always hate this because it's so fucking elitist, but a lawyer gave an example to another lawyer of like, he will never be able to be a server at Applebee's. And I had this moment of like, these motherfuckers, did they know I'm in the room? Did they know that like I am processing everything they're saying? But it was a source of like great resentment and like embarrassment and everything, but also
motivation.
One of my greatest motivations.
I was going to say rejection leads to the most motivation. As a source of like inspiration, rejection like really gets me fucking going in a way that, I can fall in love with an idea that I'm creatively inspired by and all that kind of stuff, but nothing will give me like a fiery passion, like proving somebody wrong who has once rejected me. After
you lick your wounds, I find, right? Like it takes me a minute. I reserve the right to go home and like lay on the couch.
I don't have that. And actually, I know that about us.
Yeah.
I know that your time for processing is a little bit longer than mine. Mine immediately, I'm not saying it's better or worse, but I go right to the list.
Feeling rejected.
I go right to the list. It's not that I don't like to be rejected. Again, I can process and get to a point of understanding it, but it's not very easily forgotten. One of mine was
I know this one.
Forbes 30 Under 30 list.
Yeah.
I really fucking wanted it.
Yeah.
I really wanted it, and I actually felt like I deserved it. And it was really tough to take that I didn't get it because this was like a dream that was maybe like 10 years in the making. And when I first established the dream, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed entrepreneur, like thought like I'm going to build something. This was very 2011, 2012. So where people were investing still in ideas, not in profit.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just had to have a great pitch and you had to get somebody to believe in you and you could attain capital. And I was doing that. I raised just shy of $1 million. And so I was like, I have some success here. Like I'm young and I'm in my 20s and this is happening for me. And then opening the production company and working with celebrities. And I felt like I had enough credentials to have earned it.
Yeah.
But then I went above and beyond, I thought. And I had already had some articles where I was mentioned in Forbes or mentioned in Inc. and all the other publications, Adweek. I had already had my name in the press. And so I used those as examples of like, the coverage of like the validation. And then I had also gotten a few really key people who were, I thought advisors somehow. I like made up this narrative that there were like an advisory board, which maybe there is or maybe there isn't. But where my downfall is that I wasn't aware that things like that are pre-negotiated sometimes. I think that they like try to source like editorially. They really do try to source.
I was going to ask you, do you see the bright orange parallel between you putting your movie into a festival and putting yourself into a festival of the 30 under 30?
Sure.
Right? Like it's literally the same fucking thing.
Well, I think that my dreamy mindset is like, they're going to see you and appreciate you and pick you like, yes, yes, yes.
Right.
No, baby, it is a fucking business. Like lists like that are negotiated.
Right.
And if you don't have a publicist to help you get into those lists, then you're never going to get it.
That's my point. Be more forgiving of yourself.
But I don't think enough people know this. Like, I don't think that a lot of people, like when you get rejected from something that you know nothing about, you got to take some personal responsibility that you were not properly prepared to receive that rejection.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know the actual variables that the other people who were making the decision of the rejection or acceptance had to consider, or their parameters to come to that conclusion.
Is there a little life lesson in here about putting so much of our own happiness and validation in
external
the hands of others?
validators? I mean, yes, 1000%. But the bigger lesson is to just like do the research. People who want things and are ambitious enough to ask for them, but have not done the research.
Yeah.
I'm like, your rejections must sting the most because you don't even know why you're being rejected.
Right.
But you're ambitious, so you're getting rejected often.
Yeah, catch-22, or if that's the right expression, but because you need one to do the other.
Yeah.
You need the ignorance, like we were talking to David, you need the ignorance to follow through and do something so fucking brash that you probably shouldn't if you had more research under you.
That ignorance has also served me very well. I think as an entrepreneur, you have to be somewhat like dreamy minded because you're going to get told no way more than you're going to get told yes.
Yeah.
But you can never let that stop you from continuing to go forward. Like when I do get rejected, I'm also a little bit like, they didn't get it. Like they're, you weren't the right person.
Yeah.
Or like, okay, this wasn't the right time or whatever. I'm much more calm these days about rejection than I previously have been.
It's like a moment of healthy ego.
I think so.
Right? Yeah.
A self-pride of like, I think this is good. This isn't about,
Though the stakes get higher, I think we are better equipped as we get older. We have more experience under our belt. We have more just perspective on all of these things. You're like, okay, well, I'm a little older now. I know some of these things don't work out.
Yeah.
Right.
There have been some common things that people get rejected for that I haven't experienced yet. College. I got into the one and only college that I ever applied to. I didn't get rejected from college. I got the first house that I bought. I did not get that rejected, which I then learned is a lot of people get rejected from house applications.
Unbroken green lights.
So there are some very common things or relatable things that I'm I've gotten lucky on, and I'm grateful for that because there are times where you do go into a situation where you're like, oh, I'm most likely to get rejected from this.
Yeah.
And then you don't, and you can appreciate it more because, oh, fuck, that I got lucky. That really came together for me.
Yeah.
Which I don't think when we go to the perspective of and motivation of being rejected, I pity people who have not had some degree of intense rejection in their career. If you just get green lights, then you're never going to know the pride of actually getting something that you've fought for or earned truly accepted or approved,
That's right. I just don't ever feel like I've had that and been able to realize it in the moment. So in hindsight, tons of times when I've been like, oh, thank God that didn't. I was praying for that to work out and it didn't. And thank God it didn't, right? There have been a bunch of those that I'm actually deeply grateful. But if you had left me with my hands on the wheel, I would have steered it into the fucking rocks, right?
Well, if enough rejections line up, then you start to whoa. Okay, what am I doing wrong here?
Right.
Because I don't think this should be rejected, but it is. So what needs to be adjusted? And I think a lot of people, they stop there.
Yeah.
They don't continue on to then reflect, do the work, adjust, pivot, and then go back.
Well, there's a natural propensity to be take me as I am.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than, well, maybe I need to do a little work and sand some of these edges on things that haven't been going so
Especially
well.
with creative ideas.
Yeah.
Again, you're just getting told a no and no further feedback on a script or on your portfolio or anything like that.
Yeah.
It could be tough because you don't even know, well, why, what? Why am I being rejected?
I think, and this probably get me in a little trouble with you, but especially I think for two things. One, younger designers and in a corporate commercial environment, because they're coming in thinking, well, okay, somebody hired me because I'm a creative. Therefore, they want my creative ideas.
Right.
Therefore, my idea must succeed or I'm not good at my job and I'm not, a value to this team and whatever. When in actuality, it's no, you're just getting us started, right? That's a wonderfully terrible idea that will kick off a better one. Just get in, just no bad ideas, improv, right? Just throw shit out there. One of them is eventually going to stick. It's not your job to hit it out of the park every time. I think that's
totally.
it's a freeing sense for a young creative anyway.
Well, and it's interesting. We've talked with a couple of people now where the idea of collaboration and being rejected in a collaborative way, in a collaborative environment, you have to learn to lick your wound quite quickly to then okay, we're moving forward still. The group is moving forward. So to not take things so personally when you are rejected, the mission still remains and the timeline and the budget still remains that it needs to get done. So you can't sit and sulk or opt out. You have to keep moving forward on a project. And for me, that's easy to do. But as a manager, I'm curious, again, you've got to be managing a lot of different people's emotions.
And expectations, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many outcomes tied to one particular project or campaign, you're trying to get as many of them as possible. All the ones for the business that are natural, right? Like we want to sell more things, we want to have a great commercial, whatever it might be. But somebody else in there is like, I'm an art director trying to make my mark to become the creative director or ACD or whatever, right? Like they have like a game within the game. They have a goal and an outcome that like somebody like me is not thinking of in the moment. I need to be like reminded of that and try to build pathways to get there. But yeah, often even the best project leads to somebody's perception of like being like denied something.
Well, that's the other thing is like, you said the word expectation. And I think that's incredibly interesting because I think that people in their careers get to a certain level or a position where they don't expect to be rejected anymore. Yeah. And this is that fucking infographic that like success is not the straight line. It's that squiggly thing. But when you actually like think about that, like those loops on that squiggly is like emotionally being rejected, like sliding back. Like you may have gone through a great stretch of time where you just got yesed and you got forward and you moved forward in your career. You achieved success and then you didn't. And it's like, that can be a real sting to deal with is like late in career rejection. You kind of have to expect it when you're just starting off as an entrepreneur, creative, whatever. There's going to be a certain level of rejection. I think every sane person understands that. But when you're later in your career, especially if you're in an established team or a position, you probably start to lose the expectation around rejection.
It's scary for two reasons. One, you like just to lay it out there for myself is like one, my ability to provide for the family.
Sure.
Right? Like that's scary. And then you wonder, like, do I still have it? I'm not trying to shit on like old creative. There's many brilliant creatives that work their whole lives that way. But I'm just saying as a gang, you don't see a lot of like 50 plus leading internal brand teams and stuff, And so me on the cusp of that, I sometimes think like, well, what's my shelf life? Has it run its course? Do I need to move more and deeply into like the business itself or something?
Is that like a lack of trust with your own creativity or
I think it's just
abilities?
Natural sensitivities that arise and you're just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Insecurity. It's natural insecurities that are always there, but like, it's like stubbing your toe. I've always had the toe and I didn't realize it hurt so fucking bad until I just stubbed it. So it's been there. I just haven't had those insecurities plucked for a long time. And then something pops up and you're like, oh shit. And I have a couple friends that are in this situation right now, all being like men of a certain age or whatever. And you're like, well, on the one hand, maybe that's for the better. I mean, for like people at large, right? But two, it's like, yeah, it's fucking scary. I didn't realize the clock was sort of running out on that. It was time bound. And I chose a career where, it's more advantageous to be a younger person than a middle-aged person. But, fuck it. We all deal with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that if you're getting the sense that your age is the reason why you're being rejected, then like your superior boss doesn't respect the experience and like the historical knowledge, the tribal knowledge of the business or the brand that you maybe have been in a long term or something like that, And listen, creative is just like fashion. Like everything comes back into vogue. Yeah. And so it's like to know and to have those references and to have somebody that has that, I think is like an incredibly valuable thing. But I get what you're saying. It does get rejected often.
It doesn't negate it. I mean, I think about that. I think what persists is like fucking good taste and know-how and experience persist, no matter how much AI is brought into the equation or other, technology, or you get these totally dissociated C-suite teams who are like, oh, we just need to, my niece told me we need to be big in TikTok. So can you just get it right? And suddenly they're looking for something that doesn't even like exist that you weren't thinking of before. So you're like, all right, I don't need to worry about not being that. They're wrong. It'll come back around for me again.
Early in my career, as an entrepreneur, I was being rejected and I just expected it. And a lot of it was with investors and people that I was trying to convince about an idea that I had yet to materialize. This was for Deamery Tech. This was the analytics company. And you would walk into, some huge capital, company, and you'd be like, oh, I'm not going to walk out of here with what I want. Like you could go into situations pretty easily knowing that you're going to get rejected. Yeah. But then you go to some of these pitch events and you're like, oh, I got this. Like, I'm not going to be rejected. They, they should say yes to this. And so I learned about rejection through mainly trying to raise capital or convince people about an idea. So I've never been insecure. I've never allowed it to really tamp my insecurity about the quality of my ideas or my creativity. I've been kind of lucky that way. I've just built this thick skin of rejection, of like expecting to be rejected. Where I get tripped up is when I lose that and my dreamy mind is there and I'm like, plan A is going to work out perfectly and it's going to go so well. And then this is going to line up and then this will lead to this and this. That is when I get rejected in that mindset, which is kind of where I am more these days because I am taking new risks for me. You know, it's funny, as a commercial producer, people know you as that. So all of like my Hollywood contacts, like, I think that they know me as a commercial producer or casting director. Now that I'm going into originals with film and TV that are my ideas, it's amazing to me that those lanes, those side by side, never cross. Yeah. And so I'm meeting brand new people. So I kind of went in thinking, oh, I know Hollywood. Like, I know how to navigate these conversations. I know the players and what they need and how to appease them just as much as getting what I want out of a relationship. And I've been humbled by learning how different an agent for a talent that is doing a scripted project is not the same negotiation with the agent of the talent
commercial
for a commercial.
Yeah.
And having to re-educate myself and learn and just be self-aware enough that I have to take a step back, kind of lower expectations and re-enter the conversation so that I don't take the rejection so personally.
Again, I come back to, and look, I don't have a big point here to underscore other than it's because we have expectations on the other side that it feels hurtful, that it feels more like, oh, fuck, how did I not get this one? Or how did this not work? Or how did this not get picked up? So I think it's, like if I was a younger version of myself, a younger creative at like 26, 27 now, I would start to train myself for it. I would start to align expectations with more of these are not going to get picked up. More of these are not going to get bought. More of these are going to get said no to than I think I was prepared for at the time.
I'm watching this, I stumbled upon this show about a dance group in Australia.
Stumbled upon
No, truly. Show. I mean, the algorithm delivered it right to my gay ass, knowing full well I was going to press play on 7 episodes. But I have been watching it and to see the light in these teenagers' eyes about their future careers in dance. And they're like, after this, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to get this. And then an agent will lead to this and this. And I'm like, oh God, I was that little kid too, though. I absolutely was, I moved to New York wanting to be an actor. So that lasted 2 weeks, but I fully was bright lights, big city. Are you asked ever to give advice or to mentor somebody younger and who's so optimistic? And how do you kind of prepare them for rejection?
No, it's less, you can't be prepared for it. But I think, especially on the commercial side.
Really? You don't think you can be prepared for it?
No, because they're it's going to hurt each time, a little bit, a lot of it.
I totally disagree. I wish somebody was like, hey, guess what? These hopes and dreams you have, good fucking luck.
Yeah, but that's also crushing someone in the moment who's got that, we talked about the childlike approach to creativity. And
and I think a majority of kids would be crushed by it. But I also think that there's a rare few that are like, oh, good to know.
In the end, we might be saying the same thing. What I'm saying is you asked me how I would coach somebody through this. I would coach them through it by adjust your expectations. On the other end of this, know that a lot of these things how many times have you taken, even with my teams in our experience, where we've taken a little of column A and a little column B and pushed it together, right? Yeah. Some amalgamation of an idea or a concept and the creatives are always like, oh, what the fuck? They basically, it was a non-decision. They said, just take both of them and do the best parts of both of them.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's how a lot of these corporate projects go. It's you're serving many masters throughout this process. And so when I approach newer, younger creatives, I just make sure that they kind of understand what it's probably going to look like on the other side without trying to crush the need to bring.
We are getting to the same point, but you have a much more delightful delivery and softer approach.
Of course, because you're an assassin, which is
I don't think so.
It's interesting because our personalities and maybe the ways that they mesh and the ways that they do not are in my sensitivity and your brashness sometimes, right? Your ability to just well, fuck it, move on.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about us.
No, either do I. But that's our Venn diagram crossover for sure.
Do you want to talk at all about your support system through all this? You've had advisors, you've had.
So when I do experience rejection, very rare, very
rare.
There are certain people that I'll be vulnerable and actually go to and share how I'm feeling about it while I'm trying to process through it. Friends, my core friend group for me is I can be very honest with them about hey, this happened and these are all the details of it. And like, well, I'll fucking reiterate the phone call.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And they now know me so much. And I think that like the reason why I'm able to be so vulnerable with my friends when I'm feeling rejected is because they believe in me so much that they actually do see where I'm going to go. So for them, they're just along for the journey and able to be the first ones to be like, yeah, okay, next. And like, okay, and how are you? Because we know you're going to pivot. Like, how are you going to do that?
Right,
You know,
right.
like I'm also a total extrovert. So I will include all of my friends in my thinking. And like, I know, but I find it very much like by talking through it with somebody and listening to like how they're helping me get through it.
Yeah.
I will find the narrative that I need to get past the rejection.
Yeah, my face was like, I'm not judging that. I'm just like, that'd be terrifying for me.
Yeah, I know.
To be that way. To be that.
Well, you have Abby. Do you talk to Abby about a lot
of
rejection?
Tons. That goes back to like our record sessions at night, right? Like when we just haven't caught up in a while and we'll sit. And it's been going on now because of some of these like consulting opportunities and things that have false started or haven't worked out or I've like pulled out of, where I have to talk to her. But she's not just like, to be accurate about it, she's not just like, oh my God, must be so sad for you. She'll call me on my shit of like where she thinks I maybe pulled up short or didn't look at something as honestly as I could have. So I think it's amazing to have somebody like that in my life. Maybe that's the reason I don't go much further. It's not that I don't talk to friends and stuff. Yeah, it's just that as much as you are extroverted, I think I am probably introverted that much.
Totally.
Right? Like I like to bang it around in my head for a while before I'm ready to like say it out loud.
Yeah. It's interesting to be the difference between rejecting people versus ideas. Like it's very easy for me to reject when somebody's coming at me with something that I don't believe or don't align with, to very quickly and easily be like, I'm no. It's like, it's a no from me.
Yeah.
You know, and like, that's easy to reject, right? Because you kind of know yourself. You have a confidence about yourself of like, I can reject this idea that you're projecting onto me because no problem. Like it doesn't fit. Versus people. Like I give people a lot more benefit of the doubt. And like I will get a little bit further down the line before I have to reject somebody in a career-wise.
Yeah.
That can be tough because you start to build excitement in other people before you have to reject them. And then it's like, oh, fuck, I didn't mean to do that. I was continuing to explore you. I was continuing to explore this partnership with you.
Right.
But ultimately, where I'm landing on is a no. But you're excited now. So it's like tough sometimes in entrepreneur world to have to reject somebody about a partnership when you're
spent some time
bonding
together. Yeah. And that's why maybe I don't know. It's funny, all the ways that we are dissimilar. I am very quick to like, okay, I've listened to this song for 30 seconds. I know if I like this song. Do you know what I mean?
Really?
That's how I feel mostly about people and in the professional sense and otherwise. So doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, fucking step off. You know, we're not working together. It just means that like, okay, I know this isn't the person for me. And it might say as much about me as it does about them. It just means that it's not a good fit. And I can tell that very quickly.
The other thing that you may remember that we've kind of co-experienced together, and not naming any fucking names, is as somebody who I dress non-binary and I identify as he, him, but I very much am fluid with clothing.
I know where you're going with this, yes.
I have been rejected based on that.
Can I tell that?
I've been rejected based, I'm going to explain.
Without names?
No.
Okay,
I want to explain this from my point of view.
Okay, go ahead.
Because opportunities, I think like I forget because I live in New York that like there are still a majority of people in corporate world or in business world and even in Hollywood that are closed-minded and that are still very nervous about working with people that look and act differently than they do.
Yeah.
And so I have been in a few professional situations where, because I'm very public on Instagram or pictures of being in dresses or skirts or heels, that I will get passed over on an opportunity because, you know, of that. And it is a rejection that doesn't happen very often because I mainly kind of network between LA and New York, right? Which are pretty open-minded, but it has come up. And I think what's interesting is like the times that I know of that it's come up have been few and far. I think there's a bigger iceberg. And I think that as proud as I am to be a gay man in this corporate world, and in fact lean into that branding and lean into that identification and advocate for it, I know that it sometimes bites me in the ass because a lot of people that I'm still pitching to are older hetero white men. Like I'm still against the system. As many privileges as I have as a white man myself.
No.
This one particular thing kind of trips me up.
I totally agree. And I'm stuck on like the situation you're talking about. I won't say names, but being from the other side of that, I'm going back and I'm thinking now that I did what I said I would do, I think in this pod when we were talking earlier today. I chose to go to you with like what happened. I was like, do I tell Frank? Do I don't? I'm going to tell him. I didn't give it all to you. I didn't like get into like the more insulting parts of it or whatever the parts that you would find like.
Yeah, but
really,
you made me aware.
Yeah, but I made you aware because I was like, you know what? I personally would feel really terrible if this had been said about me and I showed up on set and was not knowing about it.
Right.
So anyway, I'm just realizing that right now that like I sort of in that moment practiced what I'm preaching here.
Which is why
I want to let you know something that happened.
Do you ultimately you don't regret that?
No, I don't. At the time, I was like, should I have told him? And I was like, and I still think now that would have been a really shitty thing not to know and work so closely side by side with this person.
How did you think I handled it?
I thought you handled it very, very well.
What do you remember
well.
I did?
I remember, well, between us, I remember you saying like more or less like, well, that's this person's problem. And is that going to be a problem for me and for the brand? And I was like 100% not a problem, or I wouldn't have even addressed this with you. And then I remember going and taking steps internally that, that set off some things.
I kind of immediately with this situation realized that I had the upper hand because it was homophobic.
Yeah.
And it was so clearly homophobic that it was like that person was on their heel or could have been on their heel very quickly if I went to the press because there was big names involved.
Yes.
In such a way that I was like, I have the power to blow this up, but actually it doesn't serve me right now to be emotional about this rejection and instead win them over.
Yeah.
I think was kind of my approach. And I think that we ultimately got there. And I think that it was a very successful project and all at the end of the day. Like, I don't have any problems with anybody that was involved in this, what we're talking about. And it's hard to talk around this without being specific, but I think it's for the best because ultimately no harm, no foul.
Right.
And it really was like one of the last rejections that was the most personal for me because, listen, it's vulnerable to show up sometimes in a dress, but like double-edged sword. I'm also my most confident when I am freely expressing myself.
Those are always the pictures.
In the corporate world.
When somebody says like, who's Frank? Or when Lucia will say, remind me who's Frank. I'll show it. Those are the pictures I show of her because I think it's like the most authentically happy you.
1000%.
Yeah.
But it just is like when we're talking about the topic of rejection, it was like, oh yeah, there's still like these cultural biases and like that lead to rejection that we still deal with later on. And being a successful producer, being a successful executive, like you still deal with that bullshit. It's like as much as the new kid does, who doesn't have any leg to stand on and any resume to really boast about, babe, me too. Like that shit's happening over here too.
I like to think, in fairness, like I like to think that that person is telling this story somewhere else about how they learned from some shit they did one time. You know what I mean?
I think
because I think in the end, you really won him over. In a way that he was like, oh, this is really fucking good. And the end product was really, really good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Hopefully they just felt a little foolish along the way.
Yeah. I think like it helps with rejection to keep a positive mind, like, and to try to avoid taking things so personally, understand that it's that person's world. Like it's where they're coming from that they're rejecting you personally or professionally. It really isn't so personally about you.
Yeah.
It's more where they're coming from.
But use it and learn from it where you think it applies.
Fuck
right?
yeah.
Like that's the more positive take from this entire episode is like use it because not one successful person in your life has not been on the business end of some very big disappointment and been able to turn that into something knowingly or otherwise, something really wonderful.
And ask your mentors, when did you get rejected?
Yeah.
Like ask people when they got more so about how they got rejected, when they got rejected and what they did with it than when they won. Because that is easy. You didn't learn nearly as much from when you were winning than when you're losing.
Why do you think there's a reticence to be so out with it? To be open
because it
about
can be embarrassing. Because it can feel humiliating. Like it can feel it can bring up all those insecurities that one may have about themselves.
Yeah, makes you feel small.
And it's hard to
again.
share that and communicate that to somebody without perspective and time to let that rejection kind of heal itself and then to have grown from it. Like it's hard. I think it's hard for a lot of people to do that in real time.
Yeah. I try to infuse that when I'm doing like coaching or mentoring situations, in management, is try to like disarm them by telling them something that like really shitty happened to me, professionally.
Yeah. It can be a real bonding tool.
Yeah. I think it's like, look, let's just get the cards on the table. I didn't always have, instant success either. So start from a place from there. Yeah. I don't know. Just thought of that.
It's an interesting topic. I mean, I don't think that I've seen the last of rejection. I'm fully prepared to get an email at any moment saying no on something I pitched, but I built up that resilience.
Well, it pervades every topic that we've done so far, right? It's a part of everything from the financial side of it to the business side of it to the creative side of it to the cultural side of it, really. So it won't be the last time we talk about it, but I'm glad that we took a little time to share.
I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, till next week then, shall we?
Yes. Thank you. Bye.